Welcome to Football-Oranje. Belarus 1, Netherlands 2. The Dutch are really close now to qualifying to Euro 2020. I'm Michael Statham and I'm with Jeroen Thijssen, the head researcher for Football Manager in the Netherlands. We're going to discuss the game that the Netherlands played, the goods, the bads, and what we can look forward to next month. Jeroen, thanks for joining me on Football-Oranje once again. Always good to have you back on our website, on our YouTube channel. I was just going to ask you, first of all, whether you thought this was better than the Northern Ireland game. Because that was a pretty insipid performance and they still managed to grind out a 3-1 win. Again tonight, it was quite a close game against Belarus, when it arguably should have been more comfortable. What were your thoughts on the game?
Thanks for having me, Mike. Well, I thought both games were poor. I think that both sides, and I was impressed with Northern Ireland. They really had their defence carrying out their tasks really well, playing very tight, very compact defensive unit, which goes to show Belarus did the same, that the Dutch side had quite some trouble creating good opportunities. I thought the Northern Ireland game, that was a game that Holland should really, not without playing very well, really should easily have won 3-4-0. Ultimately, there was a 3-1 scoreline, which is on paper fine. The 0-1 was scored absolutely totally out of nowhere, and then it was quite a bit of luck to get the 2-1. That was a dodgy goal. And the 3-1 was, well, it didn't really matter. It was a bit of luck, but there was almost absolutely nothing to fear from Belarus. It was 2-0 at half time. It looked like it could actually easily have been 4 or 5-0 for Holland if the game would have progressed as it did in the first half. But Belarus started off quite alright in the second half and did clinch a goal. But they did expose that this side struggled to be very creative and to create enough chances. And there's always a few slip-ups that could be dangerous. 2-1, one more mistake at the back and it could have been 2-2. So it was tricky to play like that. I think this team is much more suited against different opponents that play different type of football that will probably attack a little bit more. I think this Holland side, if they lead 1-0 or 2-0, normally that will mean that the opponent will have to play a little bit more attacking style football, which will create gaps and opportunities.
Yeah, the Netherlands prefer to play against teams that are more open. Belarus tonight were more open, they were at home, the onus was on them to attack. In terms of the story of the game, you're right, it's one of those where the Netherlands should be 4-5-0 up. It didn't really happen tonight. There were some chances, but not bountiful amounts of opportunities for the Dutch. The tail of the game led to the Dutch being 2-0 up at half time. Van Ouden's 2 goals, ahead of Promes' cross and an absolute wonder strike, which we can all agree was a very beautiful goal. But then the second half, it just became a bit more scrappy, didn't it? And Dragon got the consolation goal to sort of pull one back and cause the Dutch some panic, actually. It was only until those substitutions came on where it became a little bit more comfortable for the Netherlands. And in the end, it only took a chance for Marlon. I think it was 80th minute. So there was a long time in the second half where the Dutch really didn't create many chances. I mean, those are mainly the negatives, but I don't know about you, but the positives for me tonight, 2 standout players. I thought Promes was pretty good. Not excellent, but again, showing why he should be starting for the Dutch national team. Babel was dropped tonight, and I think Promes did a good job in place of him. Promes was playing off the right-hand side, though, but still managed to make loads of chances, and he set up the goal for Van Ouden. The other one for me was Jeroen Thijssen, who often comes into criticism whether he's playing for Ajax or the Dutch national team. And he replaced Dumfries tonight and really staked a claim, I think, for the right-back position. he was an outlet all night and pretty sound defensively and good in possession.
Yeah, I think overall, I don't think any player played really well tonight. Well, a couple of players that had a decent game, absolutely. Frankie de Jong was okay. Definitely had his moments. He had one poor slip up, but I mean, once a game can happen. But he had a good couple of good passes. Virgil van Dijk, I think, was at fault for the goal against, but his passes, his long range passes, were sublime. Promes was okay, definitely. Wijnaldum was pretty good. He was, of course, the scorer of 2 goals, and he would have had the assist on the Malen chance, which really had to have been a goal. That was a sitter. Good goalkeeping, but he could have landed that ball in any side of the goal. So yeah, that should have been a goal. Apart from that, Wijnaldum didn't do too much. It was just, he was okay, but obviously he contributed really, really well. Apart from that, I don't think anybody really stood out. I thought Donny van der Beek was a little poor. I understood why Koeman played him today. Trying to get a little bit more creativity in there. Worked a little bit here and there, but didn't think he was that great. I was okay with Promes. Wasn't fantastic, but he's a quick player. He's a good dribbler. Decent pass. He can score the ball as well, and evidently he had issues with the assist. Veltman, I'm sorry, but I disagree. He was interesting. He was, at some moments he was really good, and at several moments he was just incredibly awful. Pierre van Hooijdonk, I kind of agree. It was weird how he said it, but Veltman did most of the things okay without the ball, but I thought his touches, his passing, his crosses were just shocking. He did have one attempt in the first half. I think he had a shot which was more or less on goal, which was okay. I mean, he's definitely not a bad player, but I think in this game, I don't think he was a suitable wing back, at least in an offense. I definitely value his work rate. He's not a bad defender. He's definitely not a bad player. He's someone that I essentially would pick to take along with the Dutch national side. I'm not sure if I would start him, but he can play right back. He can play centre back as a backup option. But I thought in offense it was not his day. His crosses were poor. Some okay passes. He was involved. I'll give him that, and I'll give you that. But I didn't feel he made anything happen at all. De Ligt got a lot of stick again. I think he wasn't that bad. Yeah, he had a couple of slip-ups, but none of these slip-ups actually were terrible. He recovered in each one of them. He had a brilliant tackle in a one-on-one situation, and he prevented the quite possibly the 1-0 for Belarus, which could have been very tricky. So essentially, De Ligt, Van der Beek, Veltman. If I need to give ratings from 1 to 10, maybe I'd give them a 5 or a 6. But
there were certainly some mediocre performances tonight. I agree with that. And Koeman, after the game, he kind of summed it up and pointed somewhat towards laziness as one of the main problems with his side tonight. And he's been saying it the whole international break, really, because he mentioned it before they even played the game against Northern Ireland, that they just weren't training with the same intensity. But then in the Northern Ireland game, you could see that even though Northern Ireland were tough to break down, they really struggled to create opportunities till right at the end of the game. A major concern again, I think, for Ronald Koeman to try and think about and sort out. I'm starting to wonder whether all of this consistent team selection that Koeman insists upon, that has until now worked wonders for the Netherlands, and it's kind of brought them up back to the level where we kind of associate the Dutch a really high level that's going to be competing at tournaments, whether that consistency is actually working against them now, because you have a little bit of laziness creeping in, maybe a little bit of complacency. For example, Koeman pointed out that actually for the 2-1, the Belarusian player should have been marked by Frenkie de Jong, and he should have been in that penalty area. And actually, he's pointing the finger at Frenkie de Jong, who's been playing almost every single game, at fault for that goal. What do you think about that, Jeroen? Do you think that laziness is becoming a bit of a concern for the side?
Yes. The goal against, I think, earlier I blamed Virgil van Dijk for that, for the goal against. More in the sense that he still should have absolutely won that scrap. He should have been able to position just slightly better and win that header, but he needed to make a choice of marking two players because one of them wasn't marked, and that was indeed originally Frenkie de Jong's man. So he can. He was definitely partially at fault for that as well, for sure. And I think this is something that we often see with the Dutch national team. We think we're already there. We think we've qualified, which now definitely for 99% have done, but it was really, really close against Northern Ireland. This match was slightly less close because we're 2-0 up, 2-1. 2-2 wouldn't have been that much of an issue looking at qualifying, but Koeman did warn before the game against Northern Ireland that the players were a bit lazy, and I think that is the issue. Northern Ireland were absolutely fully intent to do the best of their abilities, and because they still had and maybe still have a decent shout to qualify for the European Championship, if not now through the playoffs. I mean, Belarus are done, but you still always want to post a good result against Holland. But I mean, that's the thing for the Dutch side. Probably, they've played really well, booked a few good results, beaten Germany, which was phenomenal in result at least. And then you get to play Northern Ireland and Belarus and Estonia, and I think a few of the players were like, we can beat them without much hassle, and that's always been a bit of a problem with the Dutch side before as well. Incredibly tricky to solve that, I think. I think that was one of the issues as well with the previous tournaments for which we didn't qualify. It was a combination of some players not reaching their form, some bad luck, but also underestimating the opponent, thinking, we will still make it. There's a couple of opponents that are not that great. Few errors, and you're not in the tournament. That's not happening this time around. And I still think we're a fantastic squad, but I think some players will need to get maybe a little bit of a kicking to the backside, perhaps, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be an issue in terms of qualifying now, but definitely a more difficult game awaits in terms of the Netherlands going to Northern Ireland away from home, and I wonder whether Koeman's going to actually get the edge back from his players, because it is a difficult game and one where the Dutch can qualify with a win. So, even with a draw, but I know that Koeman will want his team to go out there and win in Belfast. It's not all negative, of course. There were some positives. 2 wins out of 2. They are only a point away from qualification. They'll definitely want to top their group though, and they have a game against Estonia as well after that in November. The De Ligt was heavily criticised against Northern Ireland, but wasn't so bad tonight. I think that's a good step for him. The fact that it wasn't another disaster and he managed to somewhat roll up his socks and get on with it for this game, even though he wasn't brilliant, but also didn't have a terrible lot to do. And also another positive, they won without Memphis Depay, who has been inspirational for the past couple of years for the Dutch national team. So not all so bad, and 2 wins out of 2 for the Dutch, and on to November.
Yeah, I'm happy overall. I mean, 2 wins are 2 wins, and actually I don't think we've ever done well playing Belarus, and I think it was many years ago that we actually lost 2-1, and Previous encounter there was a loss as well, but then we were already qualified, so that wasn't too dreadful. But it's not the type of opponent where you will generally, although it was technically possible, but it's not a side that you're going to beat 4-5, 6-0. It's not San Marino or Andorra or Gibraltar. And Northern Ireland, yeah, that's going to be, well, it could be tricky. They show that they are a very, very decent unit. They're not great players, but you don't need to be, as long as it's a very good team. They can give the Dutch side a hard time. But overall, we've scored 6 points from these past 2 games. As you say, Memphis Depay has been immense this past year and the last several international games, and don't think we missed him at all. Would have been probably a little bit better with him, but I mean, we won. Van Alden played really well up front, bagging the 2 goals. Promise with the assist, and Marlon had that golden opportunity for 3-1. So overall, I think we have a good squad. A few more players that are close to the national team. You could talk about maybe replacing 1 or 2 or 3 players with other players. But overall, if I look at the 25 to maybe 30 players that are in contention for the Dutch national team call-up for the European Championship, I think we have a legitimate chance to be European champions. I think we're one of the teams up for maybe one of 4 or 5 countries that can win it.
That's a big claim, and one I'll hold you to in a few months' time, Jeroen, when they're knocked out of the group stage. Well, yeah, thanks for joining me, and on to November, and fingers crossed that it's a very comfortable qualification.
Hope so.
Thank you very much for watching as well. Those that are watching now, don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you're new to Football-Oranje.